Today I declare before the entire court, Mara Ellington shall be my queen. The voice of the most feared king on the continent rang out like thunder. Mara stood in the great hall. 2 months ago she was nothing but abandoned, looked upon by the entire world with contempt. And now, the entire kingdom must bow before her. But this power comes with a blood-soaked price. 3 kingdoms are secretly allied to crush her. A fallen prince must choose between death or redemption. And Mara? She must decide whether she is a victim or something this entire world should fear. Stay until the end to see how Mara turns hell into a throne. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from. The morning Mara Ellington's world ended, she wore cream silk and pearls her mother had saved for 3 years to buy. The dress didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the fact that Marcus Thorne, the man who had promised her forever, was standing at the front of the Ashford Grand Hall with his hand wrapped around someone else's. Mara sat near the back, squeezed between distant cousins who hadn't spoken to her in months. The air smelled like imported roses and expensive perfume, the kind of scent that reminded you exactly how much money separated you from the people who mattered. "She looks beautiful, doesn't she?" someone whispered behind her. "Of course she does. Catherine Aldridge always does." Mara's chest tightened. Catherine. Golden-haired, sharp-smiled Catherine, whose family owned half the merchant routes in the eastern provinces. Catherine, who had somehow convinced Marcus that love was negotiable. Marcus hadn't even had the decency to tell Mara himself. She'd found out 3 weeks ago when the official engagement announcement went out. A gilded card delivered to her door like a slap wrapped in ribbon. "Lord Marcus Thorne and Lady Catherine Aldridge request the honor of your presence." She should have stayed home, but some stupid, stubborn part of her needed to see it. Needed to confirm that the man who'd kissed her in the rain and promised her a future had actually chosen money over her. The officiant's voice droned on. Mara dug her nails into her palms. "Do you, Marcus Thorne, take this woman?" "I do." Mara's throat burned. She stood up. It wasn't planned. Her body just moved. Chairs scraped. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Marcus looked at her. For 1 second, his expression flickered. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. But then Catherine's hand tightened on his arm, and his face went blank. "Mara." Her cousin hissed her name like a curse. "Sit down." But Mara was already walking, past the rows of silk and judgment, past the flower arrangements that cost more than her rent, past the life she'd thought she was building. She made it to the courtyard before the tears came. The stone walls of Ashford Hall rose around her like a cage. Ivy crawled up the sides, thick and old, choking the gray brick. Mara leaned against a pillar and pressed her palms against her eyes. Stupid. So stupid. Running away won't change what just happened. Mara's head snapped up. The woman standing 10 feet away wasn't dressed for a wedding. She wore black leather and a long coat that looked like it had survived a war. Her hair was pulled back tight, silver streaking through dark brown, and her eyes, cold, calculating, swept over Mara like she was a puzzle to solve. "I'm not running," Mara said, her voice rough. "I'm leaving." "Same thing." The woman tilted her head. "You always give up this easy?" Mara's hands curled into fists. "I don't know who you are, but Nirakael." The woman stepped closer, boots silent on stone. "And I know exactly who you are, Mara Ellington. Discarded, humiliated, treated like trash by a man who never deserved you." The words hit harder than they should have. "What do you want?" Mara asked. Naira smiled, but it wasn't kind. "To give you a choice." "I don't—" "Shut up and listen." Nira's voice cut clean. 2 months from now, you'll either be forgotten, a footnote in someone else's love story, or you'll be something they can't ignore. Which one do you want? Mara stared at her. "That's not a real choice." "It is. You just don't have the spine for it yet." Anger flared hot in Mara's chest. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're wasting your time crying over a man who picked convenience over you. I know you came to this wedding because some pathetic part of you hoped he'd change his mind. And I know that if you walk away right now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what you could have been." Mara's breath hitched. "Who are you?" Naira pulled a card from her coat and held it out. Heavy paper, embossed with a sigil Mara didn't recognize, a wolf's head crowned in iron. Someone who sees potential where others see weakness. Naira turned to leave, then paused. "If you want to stop being a victim, meet me at the address on that card. Tomorrow, midnight. And if I don't? Nira glanced back, eyes sharp. Then Marcus Thorne wins, and you disappear. She walked away, coat trailing behind her like smoke. Mara stood there, holding the card, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She didn't go home. Instead, Mara wandered the city until the sun set and the streets emptied. Ashford was beautiful at night, lanterns glowing against old stone, the river cutting through the center like a silver scar. But tonight it just felt cold. By the time she reached her apartment, her feet ached and her dress was ruined from the hem dragging through puddles. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Mara dropped the card on the table and stared at it. Tomorrow, midnight. She didn't know what Nira Kayel wanted. Didn't know if this was some kind of trap or test or cruel joke. But the alternative, going back to her quiet, small life, pretending today hadn't gutted her, felt worse than any risk. Mara picked up the card again. The address was in the old district, near the docks. Dangerous territory after dark. The kind of place people disappeared. She should throw the card away. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket. The next night, Mara wore black. The docks smelled like salt and rust, and the buildings leaned together like they were holding each other up. Mara pulled her cloak tighter and checked the address again. The building was narrow, wedged between a shipwright's warehouse and an abandoned tavern. No lights. No sign. Just a red door with a wolf's head carved into the wood. Mara knocked. The door opened immediately. Nira stood there, still in black, still looking like she could kill someone without breaking a sweat. "You came." "I'm here," Mara said. "That doesn't mean I'm staying." Nira stepped aside. "Come in." The interior was nothing like Mara expected. Clean floors, warm light, a fire burning in a stone hearth, and sitting near the fire, staring into the flames like he wanted to burn with them, was a man Mara recognized, Prince Rowan Vale. She'd seen his portrait in the papers, the third son of the Northern King, infamous for his drinking and his scandals. But the man in front of her looked nothing like the polished royal she remembered. His hair was too long, his jaw unshaven, and his eyes, bloodshot, hollow, barely registered her presence. "What is this?" Mara asked. "Survival," Nira said simply. She closed the door behind them. "Sit." Mara didn't move. "I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing." "This isn't a game." Nira crossed the room and poured 3 glasses of something dark. She handed one to Mara. "This is war." "War?" 3 kingdoms are moving against King Theron, Nira said. Meridian, Ostwick, Valcour. They're terrified of what he represents, and more terrified of who he just made his queen. Mara's stomach dropped. "What?" Nira's eyes gleamed. "You haven't heard." "Heard what?" Rowan finally looked up. His voice was rough, cracked from disuse. "King Theron Kairos declared you his queen yesterday, in front of the entire court." The glass slipped from Mara's hand and shattered on the floor. "No." Her voice came out thin. "That's not possible." "It's done," Nira said. "You're the most powerful woman on the continent now. Congratulations." Mara's legs gave out. She caught herself on the back of a chair, breathing hard. "I don't... Why would he..." "Because you're exactly what he needs," Nira said. "A symbol, a message, someone the old families can't control." "I didn't ask for this." "No one asked for power," Rowan muttered. "It just shows up and ruins your life." Nira shot him a look. "Not helping." Mara's mind raced. King Theron Kairos, the man they called the Iron King, the one who'd united the southern territories through sheer force and fear. She'd never even met him. "This is insane," Mara said. "I can't." "You don't have a choice," Nira's voice was flat. "The announcement is public. Every kingdom on the continent knows your name now, and 3 of them want you dead." Mara's throat closed. "Dead?" "They think you're a weapon," Nira said. "A political move designed to destabilize their alliances, and they're right, which is why they're coming for you." Mara shook her head. "I'm nobody." "You were nobody," Nira corrected. "Now you're a target." Rowan laughed, bitter, broken. "Welcome to royalty. It's exactly as miserable as it looks." Mara looked between them. Why are you telling me this? Nira leaned against the table, arms crossed. Because Theron Kairos doesn't do anything without a reason, and if he chose you, there's something in you worth protecting. She paused. Or using. I won't be used. Then be something else. Naira's eyes locked on hers. Be dangerous. Mara's heart hammered. This was insane, all of it. But the alternative, going back, pretending none of this happened, wasn't possible anymore. She was already in this. Whether she wanted to be or not. What do I have to do? Mara asked quietly. Naira smiled. Survive the next 48 hours. King Theron is sending an escort tomorrow night. Until then, you stay here. And if I refuse? Then you die alone in your apartment when Meridian's assassins arrive, Naira said. Your choice. Mara closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Nira was holding out a knife. First lesson, Naira said. Never go anywhere unarmed. Mara took the blade. It was heavier than she expected. The next day passed in a blur. Nira was relentless. She taught Mara how to hold the knife, how to move, how to watch for threats. Every lesson was brutal, efficient, stripped of anything soft. You're thinking too much, Naira said, circling her. Stop trying to be smart. Just react. Mara blocked a strike, barely. I'm trying. Try harder. Naira swept her legs out from under her. Mara hit the ground hard, gasping. Again. Rowan watched from the corner, nursing a drink. He hadn't said much since last night. Just sat there, staring at nothing, like he'd already given up. Why is he here? Mara asked, pushing herself up. Naira glanced at Rowan. Because he's going to help you stay alive. He looks like he can barely help himself. He will, Nira said. When the time comes. Rowan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Mara wiped sweat from her forehead. And you? Why are you doing this? Nira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because someone did it for me once, and I owe them. Before Mara could ask more, a knock echoed through the building. Nira's hand went to her blade. Rowan, back room, now! Rowan moved fast, surprisingly sober. Naira motioned for Mara to stay quiet, then opened the door a crack. A man in gray armor stood outside. Royal colors, northern insignia. Message for Naira Kael, he said. From King Theron. Nira took the sealed letter, scanned it, then closed the door. She handed the letter to Mara. The wax seal was still warm. Mara broke it open. Inside, the message was short. The escort arrives tonight. Be ready. Trust no one else. TK. Mara's hands shook. This is really happening. Yes. Naira's voice softened, just slightly. And you're going to survive it. Mara looked up at her. How do you know? Because you already made the hardest choice, Nira said. You didn't run when you had the chance. Night came too fast. Mara stood by the window, watching the street below. Shadows moved between buildings. Every sound felt like a threat. Rowan finally spoke. You're scared. Obviously. Good. He leaned back against the wall. Fear keeps you alive. Is that what kept you alive? Mara asked. Rowan's smile was bitter. No, cowardice did. Mara studied him. Naira said you're going to help me. Nira says a lot of things. Do you believe her? Rowan was quiet. Then he said, I used to be someone worth believing in. Then I made a mistake. A bad one. And I ran instead of fixing it. What mistake? He looked at her, eyes dark. I left people behind who needed me, and they died because of it. Mara's chest tightened. I'm not going to make that mistake again, Rowan said softly. So yeah, I'll help you, even if I don't deserve to. Before Mara could respond, Nira appeared in the doorway. They're here. Mara's pulse spiked. Stay close, Nira said. Don't speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, don't look weak. Mara nodded, throat dry. They moved through the building, down narrow stairs, and out into the alley behind the docks. 6 riders waited in the shadows, all armed, all watching her like she was a threat. And at the front, on a black horse that looked like it had been carved from midnight, sat a man Mara had only seen in paintings. King Theron Kairos. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, dark hair tied back, sharp features. eyes that saw everything and forgave nothing. He looked at her, and Mara felt the weight of that gaze like a hand around her throat. "Mara Ellington," he said. His voice was low, controlled. "You're coming with me." It wasn't a question. Mara swallowed hard. "Why?" Theron's expression didn't change. "Because in 2 days, 3 kingdoms are going to try to kill you, and I don't intend to let that happen. Why do you care?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or something colder. "Because you're mine now," he said. "And I protect what's mine." He extended a hand. Mara looked at Naira, at Rowan, at the man offering her a future she didn't understand. Then she took his hand. Theron pulled her up onto the horse behind him. His grip was strong, steady. "Hold on," he said. And then they rode. The city blurred around them. Mara clung to Theron's back, heart pounding, the knife Naira gave her pressed against her ribs. She didn't know where they were going, didn't know what came next. But as the palace gates rose ahead, glowing in the moonlight like a fortress built from war and will, Mara realized something. She wasn't the girl who got left behind anymore. She was something else now, something dangerous. And the world was about to find out. The palace was nothing like Mara imagined. She'd expected gold and velvet, the kind of opulence that screamed wealth. Instead, the halls were stone and iron, lit by torches that cast long shadows across walls covered in maps and weapons. It felt less like a home and more like a war room that never closed. Theron dismounted first, then reached up to help her down. His hands were warm despite the night air. "Follow me," he said, already moving. Mara's legs shook as her feet hit the ground, but she forced herself to keep up. Behind them, the riders dispersed without a word, vanishing into the corridors like smoke. They climbed a staircase that seemed to go on forever. Mara's breath came short, her ribs still aching from Nira's training. When they finally stopped, Theron pushed open a heavy wooden door. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged to someone who actually lived there. A bed with dark blankets. A desk covered in correspondence. A window that overlooked the entire city, lights twinkling like trapped stars. "This is your room," Theron said. Mara blinked. "Mine?" "Until we figure out what to do with you." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "The coronation is in 3 days. You'll be presented to the court then." "Presented?" Mara's voice cracked. "Like I'm some kind of queen," Theron finished, "which is exactly what you are." "I didn't agree to this. You came with me tonight. That was agreement enough." Mara's hands curled into fists. "You can't just decide someone's life for them." Theron's eyes darkened. "I can when their life is the only thing standing between this kingdom and war." "I don't understand." "You don't have to." He straightened. "All you need to know is that 3 kingdoms want you dead, and I'm the only thing keeping you alive. So you'll do what I say, when I say it. Understood?" Mara met his gaze, anger burning hot in her chest. "No." For a second, Theron looked surprised. Then his mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Good," he said. "I was starting to think Naira brought me a coward." He turned to leave. "Wait," Mara said. "Why me? There are hundreds of women you could have chosen, women who actually want this." Theron paused in the doorway. "Because you're the only one Marcus Thorne publicly humiliated, and that makes you exactly what I need. A symbol of your power? A reminder that loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is not." His voice was cold. "Marcus made a mistake when he discarded you. I'm simply correcting it. I'm not a tool." "Everyone's a tool," Theron said. "The only question is whether you're useful or not." He left, the door closing behind him with a heavy thud. Mara stood there, shaking with rage and fear and something else she couldn't name. She crossed to the window and stared out at the city. Somewhere down there, Marcus was probably sleeping next to Catherine, oblivious to the fact that his rejected lover had just become the most dangerous woman in the kingdom. Mara pressed her forehead against the cold glass. She should feel triumphant, vindicated. Instead, she just felt trapped. Morning came too early. Someone knocked on the door before dawn. Mara, who hadn't slept at all, opened it to find a woman in servant's clothes holding a tray of food. "His Majesty requests your presence in the strategy room," the woman said, eyes down. "After you eat." Where's the strategy room? I'll take you. The woman left the tray and disappeared. Mara forced herself to eat bread, cheese, something that might have been eggs, then dressed in the clothes someone had left folded on a chair, plain black trousers and a tunic. Practical. Nothing like the silk she'd worn to Marcus's wedding. That felt like a lifetime ago. The servant returned and led Mara through a maze of corridors. They passed guards who didn't acknowledge her and courtiers who stared like she was something dangerous, let loose from a cage. The strategy room was exactly what it sounded like. A massive table dominated the center, covered in maps marked with colored pins. Theron stood at the head, flanked by 3 men Mara didn't recognize and 1 woman she did. Naira. "You're late," Theron said without looking up. "I didn't know I had a schedule," Mara shot back. Naira smirked. Theron gestured to the map. Meridian, Ostwick, and Valcour. 3 kingdoms, all aligned against us. They're calling it a defensive pact, but we both know what it really is. War, one of the men said. He was older, gray-haired, with scars running across his jaw. They're scared of what you represent, Majesty. A unified South. A king who doesn't need their approval. They're scared of me, Mara said quietly. Everyone looked at her. They think I'm a weapon, she continued. Naira told me. Theron's eyes narrowed. Naira talks too much. Naira tells the truth, Naira said, which is more than most people in this room. The gray-haired man bristled. How dare you? Enough. Theron's voice cut clean. Mara's right. They're terrified of her, which means we use that. How? Mara asked. Theron leaned over the map. By making sure they stay terrified. We have 3 days before the coronation. In that time, we need to send a message so loud, so undeniable, that they think twice before moving against us. What kind of message? Mara's throat was dry. Theron looked at her. The kind that proves you're not just a symbol. You're a threat. I don't know how to be a threat. Then learn. Naira stepped forward. I'll train her. You have 2 days, Theron said. Make it count. Naira nodded. Come on, Your Majesty. Mara flinched at the title, but she followed Naira out of the room, past the stairs, past the guards who looked at her like she might explode at any second. They descended into the lower levels of the palace, where the stone walls sweated moisture and the air smelled like old iron. What is this place? Mara asked. Where we train people who need to survive. Naira pushed open a door to reveal a room filled with weapons and practice dummies. Strip. What? Your tunic. Take it off. I need to see how you move. Mara hesitated, then pulled the tunic over her head. Underneath, she wore a thin undershirt. Naira circled her like a predator. You're too stiff. Too much in your head. I've been in my head my whole life. Well, now you need to be in your body. Naira picked up 2 wooden practice swords and tossed one to Mara. Defend yourself. Mara barely caught it. Naira attacked. The next hour was brutal. Every time Mara thought she'd found a rhythm, Naira changed the pattern. Every time she dropped her guard, Naira punished her for it. You're thinking about Marcus, Naira said, striking hard enough to rattle Mara's bones. I'm not... Liar. Naira swept her legs out. Mara hit the ground hard. You're still carrying him around like dead weight. Let him go. I have. Then why are you fighting like someone who's already lost? Naira stood over her. You want to survive? Stop being a victim. Start being dangerous. Mara's chest heaved. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Naira offered her a hand. You just don't want to admit it. Mara took her hand and pulled herself up. Her whole body ached. Again, Naira said. They trained until Mara's arms felt like lead and her lungs burned, and then they trained more. When Naira finally called a stop, Mara collapsed against the wall, sweat dripping into her eyes. Better, Naira said. Not good, but better. Thanks, Mara gasped. Naira sat down next to her. For a moment, they just breathed. Why are you doing this? Mara asked. Really? Naira was quiet. Then she said, I used to be like you, someone's cast off, someone nobody wanted. And then someone gave me a chance to be more than that, so I'm paying it forward. Who gave you the chance? Naira's jaw tightened. Someone who's gone now. Mara didn't push. You want to know the truth? Naira said. Theron didn't choose you because of Marcus. He chose you because he saw something in you that you don't even see yet. What? Someone who's already survived the worst thing that can happen to them. Nira looked at her, and that makes you more dangerous than any soldier. Before Mara could respond, the door opened. A guard stood there, face grim. Lady Nyra, His Majesty needs you, now. Nira was on her feet instantly. What happened? Assassination attempt. One of the southern lords. Mara's blood went cold. Nira looked at her. Stay here. Don't leave this room. Wait. But Nira was already gone, the door slamming shut behind her. Mara sat alone in the practice room, her heart pounding. This was real. People were dying, and she was part of it now, whether she wanted to be or not. Hours passed. Mara waited, listening to every sound, jumping at every footstep. No one came for her. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed a practice sword, better than nothing, and opened the door. The corridor was empty. Mara moved carefully, following the path they'd taken earlier. The palace felt different now, colder, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. She heard voices ahead and pressed herself against the wall. Can't prove it was them. We don't need proof. That was Theron's voice, sharp with anger. We know. Knowing and proving are different things. Then we make them prove it. Mara peered around the corner. Theron stood in a side chamber with the gray-haired man and two others. Blood stained the floor. How? The gray-haired man asked. Theron's eyes were cold. We send a message they can't ignore. And what message is that? That every move they make against us will cost them twice as much. Theron's voice dropped. Starting now. One of the men cleared his throat. Your Majesty, if we retaliate too harshly. They tried to kill Lord Brennan in his own chambers, Theron said. In my palace. Under my protection. If I don't retaliate, I'm not a king. I'm a target. Silence. Then the gray-haired man said, What do you need from us? Mobilize the southern legions, quietly, and send word to our spies in Meridian. I want to know who ordered this. And when you find out? Theron's smile was sharp enough to cut. Then we make an example. The men nodded and left. Mara pulled back, heart racing. She needed to leave before, You can come out now. Theron's voice echoed down the corridor. Mara froze. I know you're there, Mara. She stepped into view, sword still in hand. Theron looked at her, one eyebrow raised. Planning to defend yourself with that? If I have to. Good. He walked toward her. You shouldn't have left the training room. I couldn't just sit there. Yes, you could. He stopped in front of her, so, but you didn't. Which tells me something. What? That you're braver than you think, or stupider. I haven't decided yet. Mara's grip tightened on the sword. What happened? Someone tried to kill one of my lords. They failed. He's alive. The assassin is not. Meridian? Theron's eyes darkened. Most likely, which means the timeline just accelerated. What timeline? The one where we go to war. He turned away. Come with me. Where? Somewhere you need to see. Mara followed him through the palace, deeper than she'd been before. They descended stairs that spiraled down into darkness, lit only by torches that flickered in the stale air. At the bottom was a door guarded by two soldiers. They saluted when they saw Theron. Leave us, Theron said. The guards obeyed without question. Theron pushed the door open. Inside was a cell. And in that cell, chained to the wall, was a man. He was young, maybe 25, and covered in bruises. His clothes were torn, his face bloody, but his eyes were still defiant. This is the assassin who tried to kill Lord Brennan, Theron said. He's not talking, yet. Mara's stomach turned. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand what we're dealing with. Theron stepped closer to the cell. These people don't care about mercy. They don't care about justice. They want power, and they'll kill anyone who stands in their way. The man in the cell spat blood. You're a tyrant. I'm a king, Theron corrected. There's a difference. Not to the people you've crushed. Theron's expression didn't change. I've crushed people who needed crushing, and I'll do it again if I have to. You can't stop what's coming, the man said. 3 kingdoms, united. You're outnumbered, outmatched, and that little girl you're hiding behind won't save you. Mara's breath caught. Theron looked at her. Do you want to know what he means? Mara nodded, throat dry. Theron turned back to the assassin. They think you're a witch, Mara blinked. What? A witch, a sorceress, someone who's cursed the king into making irrational decisions. Theron's voice was flat. They've been spreading the rumor for weeks. Ever since I announced you as my queen. That's insane. It's effective. Theron crossed his arms. People fear what they don't understand, and they don't understand why I'd choose you. Neither do I, Mara admitted. The assassin laughed, bitter and broken. She doesn't even know, does she? You haven't told her. Theron's jaw tightened. Shut up. Told me what? Mara demanded. The assassin leaned forward, chains rattling. You're not just a symbol, girl. You're the key. The key to what? Theron grabbed the man by the throat through the bars. One more word, and I'll make you wish you died in Brennan's chambers. The man choked, but his eyes stayed on Mara. Ask him about the old blood. Ask him why he really chose you. Theron squeezed harder. The man went limp. Theron released him and stepped back. Get out. Not until you tell me what he meant, Mara said. It's nothing. Lies meant to destabilize us. Theron, Mara's voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Tell me the truth. For a long moment, Theron just looked at her. Then he sighed. There's a prophecy, he said quietly. An old one. About a queen who would unite the kingdoms, not through conquest, through something else. What? Power. Theron's eyes were dark. The kind that doesn't come from armies or gold. The kind that comes from the land itself. Mara's blood went cold. You think I'm, what? Some kind of chosen one? I think you're someone who survived when you should have broken, Theron said. And that makes you dangerous to them, to me, to everyone. I'm not powerful. Not yet. He moved closer. But you could be. Mara backed away. You're insane. Maybe. Theron's voice was soft. But I'm also right. Before Mara could respond, a sound echoed through the corridor above. Footsteps. Running. Theron's hand went to his sword. A guard burst through the door at the top of the stairs. Your Majesty, the Northern Gate! An explosion rocked the palace. Mara stumbled, ears ringing. Theron caught her. Stay behind me. They ran up the stairs, the guard leading the way. The palace was chaos, servants screaming, guards mobilizing, smoke pouring through the windows. What's happening? Mara shouted. They're attacking, Theron said. Now! They reached the main hall. Through the massive windows, Mara could see flames rising from the northern district. The gate was open, breached. Soldiers poured through. Meridian's colors, the gray-haired man said, appearing at Theron's side. They're not waiting for the coronation. How many? At least 300, maybe more. Theron's face went hard. Seal the palace. No one in or out, and get her to safety. I'm not going anywhere, Mara said. This isn't a debate. You said I needed to be dangerous, Mara shot back. Let me be dangerous. Theron looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Then he nodded. Give her a sword, he said. The gray-haired man started to protest, but Theron cut him off. Now! Someone handed Mara a real blade. It was heavier than the practice sword, the edge sharp enough to catch the light. Stay close, Theron said. And if someone tries to kill you, don't hesitate. I won't. They moved as a unit, Theron at the front, Mara in the center, guards surrounding them. The fighting had reached the courtyard. Steel rang against steel. Men screamed. Mara's hand shook, but she didn't drop the sword. A soldier in Meridian colors broke through the line, running straight for her. Theron moved to intercept, but Mara was faster. She swung. The blade connected with the man's arm. He screamed and dropped his weapon. Theron finished him. Good, he said, blood on his face. Again. The battle raged around them. Mara lost track of time. She just fought. Clumsy at first, then desperate, then something sharper. And then she felt it, a heat spreading through her chest, a pulse that matched her heartbeat but came from somewhere deeper. The ground beneath her feet seemed to hum. Mara? Theron's voice sounded distant. The heat intensified. Mara gasped, dropping to her knees. What's happening to her? Someone shouted. Mara looked down at her hands. They were glowing, faint, but unmistakable. The earth beneath her cracked. Everyone back, Theron yelled, but Mara couldn't stop it. The power surged through her like a flood breaking through a dam. The ground split wider. Vines erupted from the stone, thick and wild, wrapping around the enemy soldiers like serpents. They screamed. The vines tightened, and then everything went still. Mara collapsed, the glow fading. Theron caught her before she hit the ground. What? Mara's voice was barely a whisper. What did I just do? Theron looked at her, something like awe in his eyes. You just proved the prophecy right. Around them, the courtyard was silent. The enemy soldiers were either dead or fleeing, and every single person, guard, lord, servant, was staring at Mara. Not with fear, with reverence. And in that moment, Mara realized something terrifying. She wasn't just a queen, she was something else entirely, and the world had just seen it, and the world had just seen it. Mara's vision blurred. The courtyard spun around her, stone and smoke and bodies twisted into shapes that didn't make sense. She could still feel the heat in her veins, like something had cracked open inside her chest and refused to close. Get her inside, Theron said, his voice cutting through the ringing in her ears. Strong hands lifted her. Mara tried to protest, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her legs felt like water. The vines, she managed. Are still moving, someone said. They're alive. Mara turned her head. The thick green tendrils that had erupted from the stone were writhing slowly, like sleeping serpents. A few enemy soldiers lay trapped in their coils, unconscious or worse. How is that possible? A guard whispered. Shut up and move, Nira's voice snapped. She appeared beside Theron, blood streaked across her face. Get her to the inner chambers, now. They carried Mara through corridors that seemed narrower than before, darker. Every torch they passed flickered as if responding to her presence. She wanted to tell them to put her down, that she could walk, but the truth was, she wasn't sure she could. The room they brought her to was smaller than her quarters. No windows, a single bed and a chair. Theron laid her down carefully, his hands surprisingly gentle. What happened to me? Mara's voice cracked. Theron exchanged a look with Nera. Neither of them answered. Tell me, Mara said, forcing strength into her words. I deserve to know. Theron sat on the edge of the bed. The land responded to you, to your fear, your anger, whatever's inside you connected to something old, something that's been sleeping. I don't understand. Neither do I. Theron ran a hand through his hair. But the enemy does. That's why they attacked early. They're terrified of what you might become. Mara closed her eyes. I'm not a weapon. No, Nyra said from the doorway. You're worse. You're unpredictable. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand what you're dealing with. Nira crossed the room. 3 kingdoms just watched you split stone and command plants like you were born to it. They're not going to wait for the coronation anymore. They're going to come at you with everything they have. When? Soon. Theron stood, which is why we're not waiting either. Mara pushed herself up on her elbows. What are you planning? To give them exactly what they're afraid of. Theron's eyes were cold. You. You want to use me as bait. I want to use you as a solution. He leaned closer. They think you're dangerous hiding behind these walls. Imagine what they'll think when you walk right into their camp. Mara's blood went cold. That's suicide. It's strategy, Theron corrected. And it's our only option. We're outnumbered 3-1. If we wait for them to come to us, we lose. But if we go to them first, on our terms, we might have a chance. You're insane. Probably. Theron straightened. But I'm also right, and you know it. Mara looked at Nyra. You agree with this? Nira's jaw was tight. I think it's the worst idea I've heard in 10 years, but I also think it might work. Might? Nothing's guaranteed in war, Nira said. You learn that fast or you die. Mara swung her legs off the bed. Her body still felt wrong, like it belonged to someone else. And if I say no, Then we defend the palace and hope your little display scared them enough to reconsider, Theron said. But I don't think it did. I think it made them more desperate. How long do I have to decide? An hour. Theron moved toward the door. Rest. Eat something. And then we plan. He left, Nira following. Mara sat alone in the small room, staring at her hands. They looked normal now. No glow, no heat. Just pale skin and fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. She thought about Marcus, about the wedding, about standing in that hall feeling like the smallest person in the world. That version of her felt like a stranger now. Someone knocked softly. The door opened before Mara could respond. Rowan Vale stepped inside. He looked better than he had at the docks. Cleaner, at least. His hair was tied back, and someone had given him fresh clothes. But his eyes still carried that haunted look, like he was seeing ghosts everywhere. You shouldn't be here, Mara said. Probably not. Rowan closed the door behind him. But I needed to see if you were alive. Why do you care? Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I know what it's like to have something wake up inside you that you don't understand. Mara studied him. What woke up inside you? Guilt. Rowan sat in the chair, elbows on his knees. The kind that doesn't let you sleep. Doesn't let you forget. What did you do? Rowan's hands clenched. I was supposed to protect a village on the northern border. My father sent me there to prove I could handle responsibility, but I was drunk most of the time, useless. And when raiders came, he stopped, jaw working. I wasn't there. I was passed out in a tavern while they burned everything. Mara's chest tightened. How many died? 43. Rowan's voice was barely audible. Women, children, people who trusted me to keep them safe. That's why you drink. That's why I drank, Rowan corrected. Past tense. Naira made sure of that. How? She told me I had two choices, die slow or live hard. He looked up at her. I chose to live, barely, but I'm trying. Mara understood that feeling, the weight of trying when everything in you wanted to give up. Theron wants me to walk into an enemy camp, she said quietly, to prove I'm not afraid. Are you? Terrified. Rowan almost smiled. Good. Fear means you're paying attention. What would you do? Me? Rowan leaned back. I'd run, find a ship, disappear. But that's the coward's answer, and I've been a coward long enough. So you think I should go? I think you already know what you're going to do, Rowan said. You just don't want to admit it yet. He stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked back. For what it's worth, I'll be there, if you go. I owe Naira that much, and maybe I owe you too. You don't owe me anything. Everyone owes everyone something, Rowan said. That's how the world works. He left, and Mara was alone again. She stood and crossed to the small mirror on the wall. The woman staring back looked like someone she didn't recognize. Stronger, maybe, or just more broken. Mara took a breath. Then she went to find Theron. The war room was packed when she arrived. Lords and generals crowded around the map table, arguing in low voices. Theron stood at the center, arms crossed, listening without expression. When Mara entered, the room went silent. I'll do it, she said. I'll go to their camp. The gray-haired man, Lord Commander Brennan, she'd learned, shook his head. Your Majesty, this is madness. We can't risk— You're not risking anything, Mara interrupted. I am. She's right, Theron said. This is her choice. Brennan looked like he wanted to argue, but Theron's expression stopped him. When do we leave? Mara asked. Dawn, Theron said. The three kings have set up camp at the Riven Fields, 3 miles north, neutral ground. They're waiting for reinforcements before they march. How many soldiers? Best estimate, 2,000, maybe more by tomorrow. Mara's stomach dropped. And we have? 800. The room felt smaller suddenly. We're going to die. Probably, Theron agreed, unless we change the game. He gestured to the map. 3 colored pins marked enemy positions. Red for Meridian, blue for Ostwick, gold for Valcour. They're unified for now, Theron said. But alliances built on fear are fragile. If we can crack that unity, we win without fighting. And how do we crack it? Theron looked at her. By showing them something they can't explain. Something that makes them question whether their alliance is worth dying for. Me? Oh, you? Mara stared at the map. What if I can't control it? What if what happened in the courtyard happens again, and I hurt our own people? Then we adapt, Theron said. But I don't think you'll lose control. How do you know? Because you didn't lose control before. You defended what needed defending. He moved closer. That's not chaos. That's instinct. Mara wanted to believe him. She really did. Who's coming with us? She asked. 50 of my best, Theron said. Light and fast. We're not trying to fight. We're trying to intimidate. And if intimidation doesn't work, Theron's smile was sharp. Then we fight, too. Mara spent the rest of the night preparing. Nira drilled her on basic combat moves, nothing fancy, just enough to keep her alive if things went bad. Rowan showed her how to ride properly, how to stay balanced on a moving horse without falling off like an idiot. Keep your weight centered, Rowan said, adjusting her posture. And don't pull on the reins unless you want to stop. Horses are smarter than you think. Not saying much, Mara muttered. Rowan grinned. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. You're doing fine. By the time midnight passed, Mara felt like she'd been awake for days. But sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw vines and blood and soldiers staring at her like she was a monster. She found herself back at the window in her quarters, watching the city below. Lights still burned in scattered windows. People going about their lives, unaware that tomorrow might bring war to their doorstep. Someone knocked. Come in, Mara said without turning. Theron entered. He'd changed out of his armor into simple dark clothing. He looked younger somehow, less like a king and more like a man who carried too much weight. Can't sleep? He asked. Can you? Never. He joined her at the window. I haven't slept properly in 3 years. Since you became king. Since I realized what being king actually meant. Theron leaned against the frame. Everyone thinks power is freedom. It's not. It's a cage you build yourself. Mara glanced at him. Do you regret it? Every day? He met her eyes. But I do it anyway. Because someone has to. Why me? Mara asked. Really? Not the prophecy. Not the politics. Why did you choose me? Theron was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Because when I saw Marcus discard you, I saw myself, years ago. Someone I cared about told me I wasn't enough, that I'd never be more than my father's disappointment, and I believed them. For too long. What changed? I got angry, Theron said simply, and I decided anger was better than shame. Mara understood that completely. Tomorrow's going to be bad, isn't it? She said. Probably. Are we going to survive? Theron turned to face her fully. I don't know, but if we die standing, not cowering behind walls. That's not very comforting. It's not supposed to be. He reached out and tilted her chin up gently. But I'll tell you this, whatever happens tomorrow, you're not alone. You're not the girl Marcus left behind anymore. You're something he'll spend the rest of his life regretting. Mara's throat tightened. I don't want to be defined by him. You're not, Theron said. You're defined by what you do next. He dropped his hand and moved toward the door. Theron, Mara said. He paused. Thank you. He nodded once and left. Mara stood at the window until the sky began to lighten. Then she dressed at the armor someone had left for her, leather and chainmail, nothing too heavy, and went to meet her fate. The courtyard was organized chaos. Soldiers checking weapons, horses being saddled. Theron stood at the center giving orders in a voice that carried across stone. When he saw Mara, he gestured her over. You ready? He asked. No. Good answer. He handed her a sword. Better quality than the one she'd used yesterday. Keep this close. And remember what Nira taught you. Hit first, ask questions later. Basically, Theron swung up onto his black horse. Stay in the middle of the formation. Don't engage unless you have to. And if something goes wrong, run? Fight, Theron corrected. Running just gets you killed slower. Mara mounted her own horse, a gray mare with intelligent eyes, and settled into the saddle. Her hands shook, but she gripped the reins tight enough to hide it. Nira rode up beside her. You look like you're about to throw up. I might. Don't. It's bad for morale. Nira's expression softened slightly. You're going to be fine. You don't know that. No, Nira admitted, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. You should too. Rowan appeared on Mara's other side. He looked sober and focused, like a different person entirely. Ready, Your Majesty? The title still felt wrong, but Mara nodded. Theron raised his hand. Move out. They rode through the palace gates as dawn broke over the city. The streets were mostly empty, but the few people who were awake stopped and stared. Some bowed. Others just watched with wide eyes. Mara kept her gaze forward. The ride north took 2 hours. The landscape shifted from city to farmland to rough terrain scarred by old battles. The riven fields earned their name. The ground was split by deep cracks that looked like wounds in the earth. And spread across those fields were tents. Thousands of them, red and blue and gold, organized in perfect military rows. That's more than 2,000, Brennan muttered. 3,000 at least, Theron said. His jaw was tight. They've been busy. Do we turn back? One of the younger soldiers asked. No. Theron's voice was steel. We keep going. They rode closer. Enemy soldiers began to notice them. Shouts went up. Horns sounded. Here we go, Nira said quietly. By the time they reached the center of the field, they were surrounded. Soldiers on all sides, weapons drawn, forming a massive circle. Mara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Theron dismounted. Stay on your horses, he told his people. Then he walked forward, alone. 3 men emerged from the sea of soldiers. Kings, Mara realized. They wore crowns and carried themselves like they owned the world. The first was tall and thin, with silver hair and cold eyes. King Aldrich of Meridian. The second was broader, with a red beard and armor that looked like it had seen real war. King Brennan of Ostwick. The third was younger, maybe 40, with dark skin and a calculated expression. King Davos of Valcour. Theron Kairos, Aldrich said, his voice dripping contempt. Bold of you to come here. Bold of you to mass an army on my borders without declaring war, Theron shot back. We're protecting our interests. You're preparing an invasion. Semantics, Aldrich smiled. But since you're here, let's speak plainly. Abdicate. Dissolve your kingdom. And we'll let you live. Generous, Theron said. But no. King Brennan stepped forward. You're outnumbered, outmatched. This doesn't have to end in blood. You're right, Theron said. It doesn't. Withdraw your armies, acknowledge my sovereignty, and we go our separate ways. Davos laughed. You think we're afraid of you? No. Theron's eyes shifted to Mara. But you should be afraid of her. All 3 kings looked at her. Mara forced herself not to flinch. The witch, Aldrich said, disgust clear. The girl you're hiding behind. I'm not hiding, Theron said. I'm presenting. She's nothing, Brennan said. A parlor trick. A few plants don't make her dangerous. Then you won't mind if she demonstrates, Theron said. Mara's blood went cold. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to talk. Negotiate. Not, Mara, Theron called. Come here. Mara's horse moved forward before she could stop it. She dismounted on shaking legs. Show them, Theron said quietly. Show them what you are. I don't know how. Yes, you do. His eyes locked on hers. You felt it yesterday. You felt the land respond. Do it again. What if I can't? Then we die. Theron's voice was calm. But I don't think you'll let that happen. Mara turned to face the 3 kings. Behind them, 3,000 soldiers watched, waiting. She closed her eyes and reached down, not with her hands, with something deeper. She didn't know how to describe it. It felt like touching a river that ran beneath the world, ancient and powerful and patient. The earth recognized her. Heat flooded through her veins. The ground beneath her feet began to hum. Stop her, Aldrich said, fear creeping into his voice. Soldiers moved forward, weapons raised. Don't, Theron warned. But they didn't listen. The first soldier got within 10 feet before the ground exploded. Vines erupted like serpents, thick as a man's arm, covered in thorns. They wrapped around soldiers, lifting them into the air, slamming them down. Screams filled the field. Mara couldn't stop it. The power was a flood, and she was drowning in it. More vines erupted. The cracks in the earth widened. Trees that shouldn't exist grew in seconds, bursting through tents and equipment. "Mara!" Theron's voice cut through the chaos. "Control it!" But she couldn't. It was too much, too fast. The three kings stumbled backward, terror clear on their faces. And then Mara felt something shift. The power surging through her changed direction. Instead of attacking, it surrounded, protected. The vines formed a wall between Theron's soldiers and the enemy army. Mara opened her eyes. The riven fields had become a forest, impossible, living, undeniable. And at the center, glowing faintly, was her. "What are you?" Aldrich whispered. Mara looked at him, at all of them. "I'm the thing you can't kill," she said, her voice echoing across the field. "I'm the land itself, and if you march on my kingdom, I will bury you." Silence. Then Davos dropped his sword. "We're done," he said, backing away. "This isn't worth it." "Stand your ground," Aldrich snapped. "She's bluffing." "Does this look like a bluff?" Brennan gestured to the forest. "We can't fight this. We can—" "No." Davos turned to his soldiers. "Valkor withdraws, now." His army began to move, pulling back in organized chaos. Brennan hesitated, then nodded. "Ostwick as well." Aldrich stood alone. "Cowards," he spat. "All of you." "Not cowards," Brennan said. "Survivors." He signaled his troops. They retreated, leaving Aldrich's army isolated. Aldrich looked at Mara, at the forest, at his crumbling alliance. Then he too turned away. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes," Theron replied. "It is." Aldrich and his soldiers retreated, leaving the field empty except for Theron's 50 and the impossible forest Mara had created. The vines slowly retracted. The trees stopped growing. The glow around Mara faded. She collapsed. Theron caught her again. "You did it," he said, something like awe in his voice. "You actually did it." Mara could barely breathe. I couldn't control." "You controlled enough." Theron lifted her onto his horse. That's all that mattered. They rode back toward the palace. Behind them, the forest remained, a monument to what had happened. Mara drifted in and out of consciousness. She heard voices, felt hands lifting her, tasted water on her lips. When she finally woke, she was back in her quarters. Sunlight streamed through the window. Nyra sat beside the bed. "Welcome back." "How long?" Mara croaked. 2 days. Nyra offered her water. "You scared us." "Did it work? Did they leave?" "They left. Signed a treaty this morning. No war, no invasion." Nyra smiled, rare and genuine. "You saved us all." Mara closed her eyes. Relief washed over her so strong it hurt. "There's more," Nyra said carefully. "The people, they're calling you something." "What?" "The Guardian." Nyra's voice was soft. "They think you were chosen to protect the land." Mara wanted to laugh or cry. She wasn't sure which. "I'm not a guardian," she said. "I'm just me." "Maybe," Nyra said. "But after what you did, just you is enough." Someone knocked on the door. Theron entered, looking exhausted but satisfied. "You're awake," he said. "Apparently." "Good." He sat on the edge of the bed. "Because we have a coronation to prepare for." Mara stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." Theron's eyes were warm. "You just stopped a war without spilling a drop of our blood. If that doesn't make you a queen, I don't know what does." "I still don't understand any of this." You don't have to," Theron said. "You just have to keep being exactly what you are. Someone who stands when everyone else runs." Mara looked between him and Nyra. "And what if I mess up?" "Then we fix it," Nyra said simply. "Together." For the first time since Marcus had abandoned her, Mara felt something she thought she'd lost. Hope. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's do this." Theron smiled. But that night, after everyone left, Mara stood at the window again and looked out at the kingdom she'd somehow saved. And in the distance, beyond the city walls, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The forest she'd created at Riven Fields was growing, spreading, moving toward the palace like a living thing with purpose. And deep in her chest, that same heat pulsed. Awake, waiting, hungry. Mara pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, "What have I become?" The forest didn't answer, but she could feel it listening. The next morning, Mara woke to shouting. She threw on a robe and stumbled into the corridor. Servants ran past, faces pale. Guards moved with urgency that made her stomach clench. "What's happening?" she asked one of them. The guard barely slowed. "The forest, Your Majesty. It's reached the outer walls." Mara's blood went cold. She ran. Down the stairs, through the main hall, past startled courtiers. She burst through the palace doors and stopped dead. The forest had grown overnight. What had been scattered trees at Riven Fields was now a solid wall of green that stretched as far as she could see. Massive oaks and pines pressed against the city's outer wall, their roots cracking stone. Vines thick as ship ropes climbed over battlements, and every plant, every single leaf, was perfectly still, like they were waiting for something. Theron stood on the wall walk, staring at the forest with an expression Mara couldn't read. She climbed the stairs to join him. "I don't know how to stop it." "I know." Theron didn't look at her. "The question is whether we need to. It's going to swallow the city." "Maybe." Theron finally turned to face her. "Or maybe it's protecting it." Mara looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "How is this protecting anything?" "Because no army can march through that." Theron gestured to the dense forest. "And no assassin can sneak in. Whatever you created, it's turning this place into a fortress." "I didn't mean to." "Doesn't matter. It's done." Theron's eyes were sharp. "The real question is what happens next." Before Mara could respond, Naira appeared at the top of the stairs. "We have a problem." "Another one?" Mara asked. "Bigger." Nira crossed to them. "Merchants are panicking. They can't get goods in or out. The northern trade road is completely blocked. If this continues, we'll have supply shortages within a week." Theron swore under his breath. "How bad?" "Bad enough that people are talking about leaving." Nira's voice was grim. "They're scared, and scared people do stupid things." Mara's chest tightened. "This is my fault." "It's our problem," Theron corrected, "and we're going to fix it." "How?" Theron looked at the forest again. "You created it. You can control it." "I don't know how." "Then learn." Theron's tone left no room for argument. "Fast." He walked away, leaving Mara and Naira alone on the wall. "He's right, you know," Naira said quietly. "Whatever this is, it came from you, which means it'll listen to you. What if it doesn't? Then we're in trouble." Naira leaned against the stone. "But I've seen you do impossible things. This is just one more." Mara wasn't sure she believed that, but she didn't have much choice. She spent the rest of the morning trying to understand what she'd done. She walked the wall, touching the trees, feeling for that connection she'd felt at Riven Fields. But nothing happened. The forest just stood there, silent and unmoved. By afternoon, frustration had turned to anger. Mara descended from the wall and marched straight into the forest itself. "Your Majesty, wait!" A guard tried to stop her. "Let her go," Nira said from somewhere behind. "She needs to figure this out." The moment Mara stepped into the trees, the air changed. Cooler, quieter. The sounds of the city faded to nothing. She walked deeper, boots crunching on fallen leaves that shouldn't exist yet. "I know you can hear me," Mara said to the trees, to the forest, to whatever part of herself had created this. "I need you to stop." The forest didn't respond. Mara pressed her hand against the nearest oak. Its bark was rough, real, alive. "Please, you're scaring people. You're hurting people. I need you to stop growing." Still nothing. Mara's frustration boiled over. "Listen to me. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. So either help me or—" The tree beneath her hand pulsed. Mara gasped. Heat flooded through her palm, up her arm, into her chest. The same feeling from Riven Fields, but different now. Gentler, like recognition. "You do hear me," she whispered. The pulse came again. Not words, just feeling, connection. Mara closed her eyes and let herself sink into it. She felt the forest like she felt her own heartbeat, vast and complex and terrifyingly alive. It wasn't attacking, It was protecting, doing exactly what she'd told it to do when she'd faced down those three kings. Defend, survive, don't let them through. I was wrong, Mara said softly. I don't need you to protect me anymore. I need you to let people live. The forest hesitated. Mara could feel its confusion, its purpose warring with her new instructions. Please, she said, trust me. Slowly the trees began to shift, not retreating, but opening, creating paths, making space. The vines loosened their grip on the walls. The roots stopped cracking stone. Mara opened her eyes. Around her the forest was rearranging itself, not disappearing, but adapting. She walked back toward the wall. Where there had been impassable density, there was now a road, narrow but clear, enough for merchants, enough for life to continue. When she emerged from the trees, Theron was waiting. He looked at the new path, then at her. You did it, he said. I asked nicely, Mara replied. She felt exhausted, like she'd run for miles. It's not gone, but it's not attacking anymore. That's enough. Theron reached out and steadied her as she swayed. Come on. You need to rest. I need to make sure people know it's safe. I'll handle that. Theron guided her back toward the palace. You've done enough for one day. But word had already spread. By the time they reached the courtyard, people were gathering. Servants, guards, merchants who'd been trapped. They stared at Mara with expressions ranging from fear to awe to something that might have been gratitude. An old woman stepped forward. She was small, weathered, the kind of person who'd lived through hard times and survived. You did this? She asked. Mara nodded. Why? To protect you, Mara said. All of you. The old woman studied her for a long moment. Then she bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Others followed. One by one, people bowed to her. Not because Theron ordered it, because they chose to. Mara's throat tightened. She wanted to tell them they were wrong, that she wasn't worth their respect, that she'd made a mess and barely cleaned it up, but the words wouldn't come. Theron's hand pressed against her back. Accept it, he said quietly. They need to believe in something. So Mara nodded to the crowd and let Theron lead her inside. But as the doors closed behind them, she heard someone say, She's not what I expected. Better or worse? Another voice asked. Different, the first voice replied. She's real. Mara wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Theron held council with his advisors, planning how to manage the forest's presence. Nyra organized patrols to monitor the new paths. And Mara tried not to think about the fact that she'd fundamentally changed the landscape around an entire city without meaning to. That evening, someone knocked on her door. Mara opened it to find Rowan. You look terrible, he said. Thanks. I mean, you look like you haven't slept in 3 days. He leaned against the doorframe, which is probably true. What do you want, Rowan? To tell you something. He straightened. I'm leaving tomorrow, going back north. Mara blinked. Why? Because I've been running for too long, and watching you face down an entire forest made me realize I can't keep doing that. Rowan's jaw was tight. I need to go home, face my father, fix what I broke. That's brave. It's terrifying, Rowan corrected. But Nyra says terror is just courage that hasn't decided what to do yet. Mara smiled despite herself. Sounds like her. She's coming with me. Rowan met her eyes. If that's all right with you? Why would I have a say? Because she's been protecting you, and I'm asking her to protect me instead. He paused. Selfish, probably, but honest. Mara thought about it. About Nyra's fierce competence, her sharp edges that hid something softer. About how Rowan looked at her when he thought no one was watching. I think she'd go with you anyway, Mara said. Whether I approved or not. Rowan almost smiled. Probably. Be good to her. I plan to. Rowan stepped back. For what it's worth, you're going to be an excellent queen. The kind people write stories about. I just want to survive the week. You will. You're too stubborn to die. He left and Mara closed the door. She didn't sleep that night either. Instead, she stood at her window and watched the forest. It had stopped growing, but it was still there. Still alive. still connected to her in ways she didn't understand. Dawn came cold and gray. Mara dressed in the formal clothes someone had laid out, deep green velvet that matched the forest, probably not a coincidence, and made her way to the great hall. The coronation was supposed to be tomorrow, but Theron had moved it up. Why? Mara had asked when he told her. Because momentum matters, Theron said. Right now people see you as powerful, mysterious. If we wait, doubt creeps in. We do this now, while they still believe. So here she was, walking through corridors lined with guards, past courtiers who bowed as she passed, toward a throne she'd never wanted. The great hall was packed. Every noble, every merchant, every person of influence for miles had been summoned. They filled the space, a sea of expensive clothes and calculating eyes. At the front, Theron waited. He wore his crown and formal armor, looking every inch the king he was. Mara walked toward him. Her legs felt unsteady, but she kept moving. When she reached the dais, Theron spoke. His voice carried across the hall, clear and strong. 2 weeks ago, Mara Ellington was nothing, discarded, forgotten. A woman deemed unworthy by those who should have valued her. He paused, letting the words sink in. Today she stands before you as the woman who saved this kingdom from war, who faced down 3 armies without spilling our blood, who commands the very land itself to protect us. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I claim her as my queen, Theron continued, not because of prophecy, not because of politics, but because she has proven herself worthy in ways that matter. She is strong where we are weak, brave where we are afraid, and she will stand beside me as we build something new. He turned to Mara and offered his hand. She took it. Kneel, Theron said softly. Mara knelt. Theron lifted a second crown, smaller than his but no less intricate, and placed it on her head. The weight settled on her skull, heavy and undeniable. Rise, Queen Mara, Theron said. Guardian of the land, defender of the realm. Mara stood. The hall erupted in applause. Not polite, not obligatory, real. She looked out at the crowd and saw faces she recognized. The old woman from yesterday, guards who'd watched her train, merchants who'd been terrified of the forest. They were all clapping, all acknowledging her. For a moment, Mara felt like she might cry. Then she saw him, Marcus Thorne, standing near the back, next to Catherine. He looked pale, stunned, like he was watching his worst nightmare come true. Their eyes met across the hall. Marcus's expression crumbled. Guilt, regret, recognition of what he'd thrown away. Mara held his gaze for one long second. Then she looked away. He didn't matter anymore. The ceremony continued. Oaths were sworn, gifts presented. Mara moved through it all like she was watching from outside her own body. When it finally ended, Theron led her to a side chamber while the hall transformed for the feast. You did well, he said. I barely said anything. You didn't have to. Presence is enough. Theron removed his crown and set it on a table. Do you know what happens now? More ceremonies? Strategy. Theron's voice turned serious. The treaty we forced them to sign is fragile. They'll honor it for now because they're afraid. But fear fades. Eventually, they'll come back. So we prepare for war anyway. No. We change the rules. Theron leaned against the table. You created something yesterday. A forest that shouldn't exist. A power no one can explain. That changes everything. How? Because now they need to negotiate with us. Not as equals, as necessary allies. Theron's eyes gleamed. We offer them something they can't refuse. Protection, security, access to the forest's resources, and in exchange, they bind themselves to us. Mara understood what he was saying. You want to build an empire. I want to build peace, Theron corrected. Peace strong enough that no one dares break it, and you're the key to that. Before Mara could respond, the door opened. Nyra entered, looking annoyed. You're needed, she said to Theron. Some of the northern lords are fighting about seating arrangements. Theron sighed. Of course they are. He looked at Mara. I'll see you at the feast. He left with Nyra, leaving Mara alone. She sat down in one of the chairs, crown still on her head, and tried to process everything. 2 weeks ago, she'd been crying in a courtyard. Now she was a queen with power she didn't understand and responsibilities she hadn't asked for. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Mara said. The door opened. Catherine Aldridge stood there. Mara's first instinct was anger, but then she really looked at Catherine. The other woman's perfect hair was slightly disheveled. Her dress was immaculate, but her eyes were red. "What do you want?" Mara asked, keeping her voice neutral. "To apologize." Catherine's voice was quiet. "I know I have no right. I know what I did was—" She stopped, swallowed. "I took something that wasn't mine to take. Marcus made his own choice. Because I manipulated him into it." Catherine stepped further into the room. "My family needed the alliance, and I needed security. So I convinced myself that taking him from you was justified. Strategic." She looked down. "I was wrong." Mara didn't know what to say. "You deserve better," Catherine continued. "Better than Marcus, better than me. And now you have it. You're a queen, and I'm just—" She gestured helplessly. "Married to a man who looks at me and wishes I was you." "That's not my problem," Mara said. "I know." Catherine met her eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship. I just needed you to know that I see what I did, and I'm sorry." She turned to leave. "Catherine," Mara said. The other woman paused. "What you did hurt me, badly, but it also set me free." Mara stood. "So maybe I should thank you." Catherine's smile was bitter. "I don't think that's how apologies work." "Probably not." Mara adjusted her crown. "But I meant it." Catherine nodded and left. Mara sat back down, feeling strange. Lighter, maybe. Like a weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. The feast that night was overwhelming. Music and food and endless toasts. Mara sat beside Theron at the high table, trying to look comfortable while nobles approached to offer congratulations and thinly veiled attempts at currying favor. "Lord Carrick has 3 unmarried sons," Theron murmured during one such visit. "He's trying to figure out if you have sisters." "I don't." "I know, but he doesn't." Mara fought back a laugh. As the night wore on, the crowd grew louder, more relaxed. Wine flowed freely. Music filled the hall. And for the first time since this nightmare started, Mara felt almost normal. Then Naira appeared at her elbow. "We need to talk, now." Mara followed her out of the hall into a quiet corridor. "What's wrong?" Mara asked. "One of our scouts just returned from Riven Fields." Naira's face was grim. "The forest there is dying." Mara's stomach dropped. "Dying how?" "The trees are turning black, crumbling, like they're being drained." Naira grabbed her arm. "Mara, I think the forest around the city is feeding off the one at Riven Fields, using it as fuel." "That's not possible." "Neither is creating a forest in 3 days, but here we are." Naira's grip tightened. "If this continues, the entire Riven Fields will be dead within a week, and that land feeds 5 villages." Mara felt sick. "What do I do?" "I don't know, but we need to figure it out fast." They returned to the feast. Mara tried to act normal, but her mind was racing. She'd created something she couldn't control. Again. The celebration continued until well past midnight. When Mara finally escaped to her quarters, she was exhausted. But she didn't undress. Instead, she grabbed a cloak and left the palace through a side door. She walked to the forest, to the place where she'd first made it listen. "You're killing the other trees," she said to the darkness. "The ones at Riven Fields. I need you to stop." The forest didn't respond. Mara pressed her hand against a tree. "Please, if you keep doing this, people will starve, and I'll have to destroy you. I don't want to do that." Still nothing. Frustration turned to anger. "Listen to me!" The tree pulsed, but this time the feeling that came back was different. Not recognition, defense. The forest thought it was protecting her, and to do that, it needed energy, power. "There has to be another way," Mara whispered. She closed her eyes and reached deeper. Past the surface connection, past the instinct to defend, into the core of what she'd created. And there, buried in the living wood, she felt something familiar. Her own fear, her own pain. The terror and rage she'd felt standing at Riven Fields, facing down 3 armies. The forest wasn't just protecting her, it was an extension of her. Every emotion she'd poured into it at that moment had taken root and grown. "I'm not afraid anymore," Mara said softly. "You don't need to protect me like this." The forest hesitated. "I'm safe," she continued. "We're all safe. So you can rest. You can stop fighting." The pulse beneath her hand weakened. The defensive energy faded. Mara felt the forest's awareness shift, from attack to dormancy, from weapon to shelter. She opened her eyes. Around her, the trees seemed to settle, like they'd been holding their breath and finally exhaled. "Thank you," Mara whispered. She walked back to the palace as dawn broke. Her body ached. Her mind was exhausted. But for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. Theron was waiting in the courtyard. "Where were you?" "Fixing my mistake," Mara said. "Did it work?" "I think so." Mara looked back at the forest. "We'll know by tomorrow." Theron studied her. "You're learning." "I'm surviving." Mara met his eyes. "There's a difference." "Not much of one." They stood together as the sun rose, lighting the impossible forest in shades of gold and green. The next day, scouts confirmed it. The trees at Riven Fields had stopped dying. The black rot was receding. The forest around the city remained, but it had stopped growing, stopped consuming. It had become exactly what Mara had asked for: protection without destruction. News spread fast. Within days, merchants were using the new paths. Farmers were planting near the forest's edge, discovering the soil was richer than it had been before. And people stopped looking at Mara with fear. They looked at her with respect. A week after the coronation, Theron called a meeting with his advisors. Mara attended, crown on her head, finally feeling like she belonged there. "The treaty holds," Brennan reported. "All three kingdoms have withdrawn to their borders, and we've received requests for formal negotiations." "Good," Theron said. "What kind of negotiations?" "Trade agreements, resource sharing, security pacts." Brennan looked at Mara. "They want access to the forest." "Why?" Mara asked. "Because it's producing fruit and game that shouldn't exist this time of year," one of the other lords explained. "And the wood is unlike anything we've seen. Stronger, lighter. Merchants are calling it a miracle." Mara looked at Theron. "What do you think?" "I think we have leverage," Theron said. "And we use it to build something permanent, not just peace through fear, peace through mutual benefit." Over the next weeks, Mara watched Theron work. He was brilliant at politics, turning every conversation into an opportunity. He offered the other kingdoms limited access to the forest's resources in exchange for long-term trade agreements and non-aggression pacts. He positioned Mara not as a threat, but as a partner. And slowly, impossibly, it worked. The three kings who'd tried to destroy them became reluctant allies, then actual partners. The forest became a shared resource, carefully managed, its power distributed rather than hoarded. One evening, Mara stood on the palace wall and watched caravans from 3 different kingdoms enter the city peacefully. Guards from different nations worked together to patrol the forest paths. Merchants from places that had been enemies last month now traded side by side. "You did this," Nira said, appearing beside her. She was dressed for travel, pack slung over her shoulder. "We did this," Mara corrected. "No, you." Nira's eyes were serious. "You showed them something they'd never seen. A woman who turned power into protection instead of conquest. That's rare." "You're really leaving?" "Rowan needs me." Nira's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "And I think I need him too. Turns out broken princes make decent projects. Will you come back?" "Eventually. Someone needs to make sure you don't forget how to fight." Nira gripped her shoulder. You're going to be fine, Mara. Better than fine." "I hope so." Nira left that night with Rowan. Mara watched them ride north, 2 people who'd saved her in different ways, now saving each other. She felt Theron's presence before he spoke. "You'll miss her." "Yes." Mara turned to face him. "Thank you. For everything." "You're thanking me?" Theron raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who stopped a war and created a miracle. You gave me the chance to do it. I gave you a title. You did everything else." Theron moved closer. "The question is what you do next." "What do you mean?" "Marcus is here. In the city. He's requested an audience." Mara's stomach twisted. "Why?" "To apologize, probably. To explain. To try and fix what he broke." Theron's eyes were sharp. Do you want to see him? Mara thought about it. About the girl who'd sat in the back of that wedding hall, broken and humiliated. About everything that had happened since. No, she said finally. I don't. You're sure? I'm sure. Mara looked out at the city. He made his choice. I made mine. There's nothing left to say. Theron nodded. I'll have him turned away. Wait. Mara caught his arm. Tell him something for me. What? Tell him thank you for leaving, for showing me what I deserved. Mara smiled. And tell him I hope he's happy. She meant it. That night Mara dreamed of forests and kingdoms and a future she couldn't quite see. When she woke, sunlight streamed through her window and her hand rested on her stomach, where something new and impossible was just beginning to grow. When she woke, sunlight streamed through her window and her hand rested on her stomach, where something new and impossible was just beginning to grow. Mara sat up slowly, her mind still foggy from sleep. The sensation was faint but undeniable, a warmth that wasn't quite physical, a presence that felt both foreign and utterly right. She pressed her palm flat against her abdomen, heart suddenly racing. No, it wasn't possible. She and Theron had barely... But even as the thought formed, Mara knew. The same way she'd known the forest was alive, the same way she'd felt the land respond to her fear and fury. This was different, smaller, but just as real. She was carrying a child. Mara's breath caught. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't think. The weight of it crushed down on her. Responsibility, fear, joy, terror, all tangled together until she couldn't tell them apart. A knock on the door made her flinch. Your Majesty? A servant's voice, tentative. His Majesty requests your presence in the council chamber. Mara cleared her throat. Tell him I'll be there shortly. She dressed quickly, fingers fumbling with laces. Her reflection in the mirror looked the same as yesterday, but everything felt different, changed. She couldn't tell Theron. Not yet. Not until she understood what this meant. The council chamber was already full when she arrived. Theron stood at the head of the table, flanked by Brennan and 3 other advisors. Maps covered every surface, marked with routes and borders and symbols. Mara was still learning to read. Theron looked up as she entered. You're late. I overslept. Mara took her seat beside him. What's happening? Trouble. Brennan pointed to a cluster of red marks on the northern border. King Aldrich of Meridian is mobilizing troops again. Not openly, but our scouts report increased activity near the border. Mara's stomach sank. He's breaking the treaty. He's testing it, Theron corrected, seeing how far he can push before we respond. Why would he risk it? Because peace makes people nervous, one of the advisors said, especially when it's built on fear. Aldrich wants to remind everyone that he's still dangerous. Or he's being pressured by someone, San. Brennan added. The nobility in Meridian wasn't happy about the treaty. They see it as weakness. Theron's jaw tightened. How long before he moves? Days, maybe a week. Then we don't give him the chance. Theron looked at Mara. We go to him first. Mara blinked. You want to invade? I want to negotiate. Theron's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. Face to face, in his own court, before he can convince himself war is a good idea. That's suicide, Brennan said flatly. You walk into his territory, he can do whatever he wants. Not if Mara comes with me. Every head in the room turned to her. Absolutely not, Brennan said. Your Majesty, with all respect, sending the Queen into potential danger sends a message, Theron interrupted. That we're not afraid. That we believe in our own power enough to walk into his house and dare him to act against us. Mara's mind raced. She understood the logic, understood the strategy. But the thought of walking into Aldrich's court, of putting herself and the child she was carrying in danger, made her want to refuse. But refusing meant war, meant blood, meant everything they'd built crumbling. When do we leave? She asked. Theron's expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or respect. Tomorrow at dawn, small escort, fast travel. We'll be there and back before Aldrich can prepare a proper defense. Or a proper trap, Brennan muttered. That's a risk we take. Theron stood. Make the arrangements, and keep this quiet. The fewer people who know, the better. The meeting dispersed. Mara stayed seated, staring at the maps. Theron sat beside her after the others left. You didn't have to agree. Yes, I did. Mara looked at him. You were going anyway. And if this is going to work, we do it together. Smart and brave. Theron's mouth curved slightly. Dangerous combination. So I've been told. Mara hesitated. Theron, if something happens, it won't. But if it does, then we handle it. Theron's hand covered hers. Together. Like everything else. Mara wanted to tell him, wanted to say that there was more at stake now than just their lives, but the words stuck in her throat. Not yet. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Mara trained with his guards, reviewing basic defense. She walked the forest one more time, feeling its quiet strength, asking it to stay calm while she was gone. That night she couldn't sleep. She stood at her window watching the city, hand on her stomach, wondering what kind of world she was bringing a child into. You're thinking too loud. Mara turned. Theron stood in the doorway, still dressed despite the late hour. Can't sleep? She asked. Never can before something important. He crossed the room. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. Mara looked back at the window. What if we're wrong? What if going to Aldrich just gives him an excuse to kill us? Then we die knowing we tried. Theron's voice was steady. But I don't think we will. Aldrich's not stupid. He knows what you are now, what you represent. A threat. A necessity. Theron moved closer. The forest changed everything. It's not just protection anymore. It's resources, medicine, food, things people need to survive. If Aldrich kills you, he loses access to all of that, and his people will turn on him. You're betting our lives on economics. I'm betting our lives on human nature. Theron's eyes were serious. People choose survival over pride every time. Mara hoped he was right. Dawn came gray and cold. Mara dressed in traveling clothes, leather and practical fabric, nothing that screamed royalty. Theron did the same. They met their escort in the courtyard. 10 soldiers, all veterans, all loyal. No one spoke as they mounted. The city was still sleeping, unaware that their king and queen were riding into potential danger. They left through the northern gate, the forest opening a path before them. Mara felt its awareness as they passed, protective but restrained. She sent it a silent message. Stay calm, don't follow. The ride to Meridian took 3 days. They traveled fast, stopping only when necessary. At night, they camped under open sky. Guards rotating watch while Mara tried to sleep and mostly failed. On the 3rd night, Theron sat beside her fire. You're scared, obviously. Good, means you're smart. He poked at the flames. I need to tell you something. Mara looked at him. What? If this goes wrong, if Aldrich tries something, I need you to run. Don't try to save me. Don't try to fight. Just run. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you will. Theron's voice was hard. Because you're more important than I am. The forest responds to you. The land responds to you. Without you, everything we've built collapses. That's not true. It is. Theron met her eyes. I'm replaceable. You're not. Mara's throat tightened. You're not replaceable to me. Something shifted in Theron's expression. For a moment he looked younger, less like a king and more like a man who'd been alone too long. I know, he said quietly. That's why I need you to promise. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wouldn't abandon him, but she thought about the child growing inside her, about the future that depended on her survival, and nodded. I promise. They reached Meridian's capital at midday. The city was larger than Mara expected, spread across rolling hills with white stone buildings that gleamed in the sun. Guards met them at the gate, faces suspicious, but not openly hostile. His Majesty wasn't expecting you, the captain said. He should have been, Theron replied. Tell him King Theron Kairos and Queen Mara request an audience. The captain hesitated, then nodded. Wait here. They waited. 20 minutes turned to 40. Mara's nerves stretched thin. Finally, the captain returned. His Majesty will see you, but only you two. Your escort stays at the gate. Theron looked at Brennan. If we're not back by sunset, we come in fighting, Brennan finished. Theron nodded. Then he and Mara followed the captain through the city. Aldrich's palace was beautiful and cold. Marble floors, high ceilings, everything designed to make visitors feel small. Guards lined every corridor, watching them with hard eyes. They were led to a throne room 3 times the size of Theron's. Aldrich sat on a raised dais, looking every inch the king he was. Behind him stood advisors and nobles, all watching with barely concealed hostility. "Theron Kairos," Aldrich's voice echoed. "Bold of you to come here. Bold of you to ignore a treaty you signed." Theron's tone was conversational, but Mara felt the steel beneath. "I thought we should discuss that." "Discuss?" Aldrich leaned forward. "You mean threaten?" "I mean negotiate." Theron gestured to Mara. "We came in peace. As equals." "We're not equals." Aldrich's eyes shifted to Mara. "You have a witch. I have an army." "I have a queen," Theron corrected, "and she's worth more than any army." Aldrich laughed. "You really believe that?" "I watched her stop a war without a single casualty on our side," Theron said. "So, yes, I believe it." Aldrich stood. He was taller than Theron, broader, with the kind of presence that came from decades of ruling through force. "You've created a problem," Aldrich said, descending from the dais. "The forest, the power, the fear. My nobles are terrified. They want me to act." "Then don't," Mara said. Everyone looked at her. She stepped forward, heart pounding. "You think I'm a threat. I understand that. But I'm not your enemy. I never was." "You command forces we can't control," Aldrich said. "I command nothing." Mara's voice was steady. "The forest isn't a weapon. It's protection. And it's not just for my kingdom. It's for anyone who needs it." "Explain." Mara took a breath. "The forest produces resources. Food, medicine, wood. More than we can use. What if we shared that? Not as tribute, as partnership. You protect the forest's borders from exploitation. We provide your people with what they need." Aldrich's eyes narrowed. "Why would you do that?" "Because peace is more profitable than war," Mara said. "And because I'm tired of people dying over things that could be solved with conversation." Silence filled the throne room. Then one of Aldrich's advisors spoke. "Your Majesty, the northern provinces have had crop failures for 3 years. If what she's offering is real—" "It's a trap," another advisor interrupted. "It's an opportunity," the first one countered. Aldrich held up a hand. Silence fell again. He studied Mara for a long moment. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," Mara admitted. Aldrich almost smiled. "What guarantees do I have?" "My word," Mara said, "and a treaty that benefits both of us more than war ever could." "Words are cheap." "Then let me prove it." Mara pulled off one of her gloves. She pressed her bare hand against the marble floor. The stone cracked. A vine grew, thin and green, reaching up toward the light streaming through the windows. At its tip, a flower bloomed. White petals, sweet scent. Gasps echoed through the throne room. Mara stood, pulling the vine free. She walked forward and offered it to Aldrich. This grew from stone. In seconds. Imagine what it could do in soil, in fields, in places where nothing grows. Aldrich took the flower, staring at it like it might bite him. "This is real. It's real." Mara's voice was soft. "And it's yours, if you want it." Aldrich looked at Theron. "You came here knowing I could kill you both." "Yes," Theron said simply. "Why?" "Because killing us would be easy. Building something better is hard." Theron moved to stand beside Mara. "And I think you're smart enough to know which one matters." Aldrich was quiet for a long time. Then he handed the flower to one of his advisors. "Draw up a new treaty, trade agreement, resource sharing, everything they offered." The advisor blinked. "Your Majesty, do it." Aldrich's voice brooked no argument. "And do it fast, before I change my mind." He looked back at Mara and Theron. "You'll stay until it's signed, as my guests." "Guests or prisoners?" Theron asked. "Both." Aldrich's smile was sharp. "But mostly guests." The next 3 days were tense. Mara and Theron stayed in well-appointed rooms that felt like comfortable cages. They met with Aldrich's advisors, hammering out details. trade routes, resource quotas, security arrangements. It was exhausting work, but slowly, impossibly, an agreement took shape. On the fourth day, they signed the treaty in Aldrich's throne room. Every noble in Meridian watched. Some looked angry, others looked relieved. Aldrich signed first, then Theron, then Mara. "This is unprecedented," Aldrich said as he stamped his seal on the parchment. "A treaty built on trust instead of force." "Trust and mutual benefit," Theron corrected. "The best kind." Aldrich handed Mara a copy of the treaty. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," Mara promised. They left Meridian that afternoon. The ride back felt different, lighter, like they'd shed weight they hadn't known they were carrying. That night, camped halfway home, Theron pulled Mara aside. "You were incredible in there." "I was terrified." "Doesn't matter. You still did it." Theron's voice was warm. "You're going to be an amazing queen." Mara's hand drifted to her stomach. "Theron, there's something I need to tell you." "What?" Before she could answer, one of the guards shouted, "Riders approaching! From the north!" Theron's hand went to his sword. Mara tensed, but the riders that emerged from the darkness carried friendly colors, northern banners. Rowan and Nira dismounted, both looking road-worn but alive. "You're back," Mara said, relief flooding through her. "We heard you went to Meridian." Nira's expression was torn between anger and respect. "Are you insane?" "Probably," Theron said. "But it worked." Rowan grinned. "Of course it did. You're too stubborn to fail." They shared a camp that night. Rowan told stories about his father's court, about the difficult conversations and harder reconciliations. Nira talked about the northern territories, about threats brewing in places they'd thought were secure. "War's not over," Nira said quietly. "It's just different now." "It's always different," Theron replied. "The question is whether we're ready for it." "We are," Mara said, and she believed it. They reached home 2 days later. The city greeted them with cheers, people lining the streets to welcome their king and queen back safely. News of the Meridian Treaty had already spread. Hope hung in the air like something tangible. That night, Mara finally told Theron. They were alone in her chambers. Theron was reading treaty documents, making notes in the margins. Mara watched him for a moment, gathering courage. "I'm pregnant," she said. Theron's pen stopped moving. He looked up slowly. "What?" "I'm carrying a child. Yours." Mara's hands twisted together. "I've known for a week. I didn't tell you because—" Theron crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled back, hands on her shoulders, eyes searching her face. "How do you feel?" "Terrified, happy, overwhelmed." Mara laughed, shaky. "All of it at once." Theron's expression cracked. Joy and fear and something deeper flooded his features. "We're having a child." "We're having a child," Mara confirmed. Theron kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, like he was trying to prove to himself it was real. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Everything changes now." "Everything already changed," Mara said. "This is just the next part." News of the pregnancy spread within days. The reaction was overwhelming. Celebrations erupted across the kingdom. People called it a blessing, a sign that the new peace would last. But Mara felt the weight of it. She was no longer just a queen. She was carrying the future, the next generation of whatever they were building. 3 months passed. Mara's body changed in ways that felt both natural and alien. The forest seemed to sense it too, becoming gentler, more protective. Flowers bloomed out of season. Game became more abundant. It was like the land itself was celebrating. Theron became impossibly attentive. He moved meetings to accommodate her energy levels. He brought her food when she forgot to eat. He read everything he could find about pregnancy and childbirth until Mara finally told him to stop because he was making her nervous. "I just want to be prepared," Theron said. "You can't prepare for everything," Mara replied. "Sometimes you just have to trust." One evening, 6 months into her pregnancy, Mara stood on the palace wall watching the sunset. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, feeling the child move inside her. Nira appeared beside her. She'd stayed at court, claiming she wanted to make sure Mara didn't do anything stupid, but Mara suspected she just liked being needed. You look happy, Nira said. I am, Mara admitted. It's strange. 6 months ago I was nobody. Now I'm... She gestured helplessly. This. You were never nobody. Naira leaned against the stone. You just didn't know it yet. Do you ever think about what would have happened if things went differently? Mara asked. If Marcus hadn't left me, if Theron hadn't chosen me? No. Nira's voice was firm. Because that's not what happened. This is what happened, and it's better. Mara smiled. When did you get philosophical? Rowan's rubbing off on me. Nira made a face. It's annoying. Where is he anyway? Dealing with some northern lords who think they know better than their prince. Nira's expression softened. He's good at it now, better than he thinks. You love him. Obviously. Nira rolled her eyes. Don't make it weird. Mara laughed. It felt good. Normal. The child kicked hard and Mara gasped. You okay? Nira asked, concerned. Fine. Just active. Mara rubbed her belly. I think she knows we're talking about her. She? I don't know, but it feels like she... Mara looked at Naira. Will you be her godmother? Nira's expression flickered. Surprise, vulnerability. Then she nodded. Yeah, I can do that. 7 months. 8. The pregnancy progressed. Healers monitored Mara constantly. Everyone was nervous. A royal birth was always important, but this felt different, more significant. In the final weeks, Mara mostly stayed in her chambers. Her body was exhausted, stretched beyond what felt possible. But she was happy, content in a way she'd never been before. Theron barely left her side. He worked from her room, handling kingdom business between checking on her and bringing her things she didn't ask for, but appreciated anyway. You don't have to hover, Mara said one afternoon. I'm not hovering. I'm strategically positioning myself nearby. Theron didn't look up from his papers. Completely different. Liar. Guilty. He finally met her eyes. I'm terrified, Mara, of what could go wrong, of not being enough. You're already enough. Mara reached for his hand. And whatever happens, we face it together, like everything else. Labor started just before dawn on the first day of spring. Mara woke to pain sharp enough to steal her breath. She gripped Theron's arm. It's time, she gasped. What followed was hours of pain and fear and determination. Healers surrounded her. Naira held her hand and told her to breathe. Theron stayed close, looking like he might pass out but refusing to leave. And then, finally, a cry. Sharp, loud, undeniably alive. The healer lifted a small, wrinkled, perfect baby. A girl, Your Majesty. Mara reached out with shaking arms. The healer placed the child against her chest, and everything else disappeared. She was beautiful, tiny, real. Mara felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at this impossible person she'd created. She's perfect, Theron whispered, voice broken. He touched the baby's hand gently, and tiny fingers wrapped around his. She's ours, Mara said. They named her Alara, after no one in particular, just because it felt right. The kingdom celebrated for 3 days straight. People filled the streets, singing and dancing and sharing food. It felt like the entire world had stopped to acknowledge this one small life. But in her chambers, holding her daughter, Mara felt the weight of what they'd built. This child would grow up in a world shaped by the choices they'd made, by peace instead of war, by trust instead of fear. What are you thinking? Theron asked. He sat beside her, watching Alara sleep. That I hope we're doing this right, Mara said quietly. That I hope the world we're giving her is good enough. It will be, Theron's voice was certain, because she'll help make it better, just like you did. Weeks passed. Mara recovered slowly, Alara grew, and life settled into something resembling normal. One morning, Mara carried Alara to the forest. It was early, dew still on the grass, and the trees were quiet. She walked to the spot where she'd first made the forest listen. I want you to meet someone, Mara said to the trees. She lifted Alara up. This is my daughter. She's the reason for everything. The forest pulsed, gentle, welcoming. Flowers bloomed around Mara's feet, white and gold and every color in between. The trees seemed to lean closer, protective without being overwhelming, and Mara felt it. The connection between the forest and her daughter, faint but real. Like the land recognized her, claimed her. "She's one of yours too," Mara whispered. "Protect her, please." The forest hummed its agreement. Mara carried Alara back to the palace as the sun rose, painting everything gold. 5 years later, Mara stood in the great hall watching her daughter play with children from 3 different kingdoms. The annual peace summit had become tradition. Kings and queens gathered to renew treaties, negotiate trade, and let their children grow up together. Alara was fearless. She climbed on furniture and asked inappropriate questions and made everyone laugh. She had Theron's sharp eyes and Mara's stubborn determination and absolutely no sense of royal propriety. Mara loved her desperately. "She's going to be trouble," Naira said, appearing at Mara's elbow. She had gray streaks in her hair now and lines around her eyes from smiling more than she used to. "She's already trouble," Mara replied. "Good. The world needs trouble." Naira watched as Rowan scooped Alara up, making her shriek with laughter. "Means she won't settle for anything less than she deserves." "Like her mother," Theron said, joining them. He wrapped an arm around Mara's waist. "Speaking of which, Aldrich wants to discuss expanding the forest network into Meridian, permanently." "He's actually asking?" "Times change." Theron's smile was satisfied. "People change." Mara looked around the hall, at leaders who'd been enemies now sharing wine and conversation, at children playing without understanding borders or old feuds, at peace that had lasted 5 years and showed no signs of breaking. "We did this," she said quietly. "You did this," Theron corrected. "You showed everyone what was possible." "We did it together," Mara insisted. "All of us." That night, after the summit ended and the guests retired, Mara walked the forest one more time. Alara slept in Theron's arms back at the palace. Naira and Rowan had gone to their own chambers. The world was quiet. Mara pressed her hand against an old oak, feeling its steady presence. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The forest hummed, content, purposeful. No longer the desperate weapon she'd created in fear, but something gentler, wiser. A choice instead of a reaction. Mara walked back to the palace as stars appeared overhead. She thought about the girl she'd been at Marcus's wedding, broken and humiliated, and certain her life was over. That girl would never have believed this, any of this. But here she was, a queen, a mother, a woman who'd turned pain into power and power into protection. She found Theron in their chambers, Alara still asleep in his arms. He looked up when she entered, eyes soft. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect," Mara said. She meant it. Later, much later, when Alara was grown and ruling her own kingdom, when Mara's hair had gone gray and her body had slowed, she would tell her daughter stories about forests and fear and the day everything changed, about a man who abandoned her and a king who chose her and a power that came from surviving when survival should have been impossible, about love that grew in the cracks of broken things. And Alara would listen, understanding that legacy wasn't just about blood or power or crowns. It was about choices, about standing when the world told you to kneel, about building something better from the ruins of what came before. But that was years away. Tonight, Mara simply held her daughter close and whispered, "You're going to change the world, little one, just like I did, but differently. Better." Alara stirred in her sleep, fingers wrapping around Mara's. Outside, the forest grew, not threatening, not wild, just alive, just there, a monument to what happened when fear became courage and pain became purpose. And in the city below, people slept peacefully under stars and ancient trees, protected by a queen who'd proven that power didn't have to destroy. It could also create. It could also heal. It could also be enough.